Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight. My name is Jonathan Basla, and I am a psychotherapist here at My Therapy NYC. I work with individuals, I work with couples, and I also run one of our gay men's groups. I run the Thursday night group held in person here at our office in the Flatiron District. So I hope you're all in the right place. This webinar is titled Coming Out, Your Journey to Self-Acceptance. Again, I work at My Therapy NYC, which is a private practice here in the Flatiron neighborhood of Manhattan. In this webinar, we will be focused on the coming out process, no matter what stage you're at, and for those trying to better understand and support someone who is coming out. So let's begin. To start off, we're going to start off with a poll, just to check in where everyone's at in this room. So if you are on your coming out journey, where are you in the process? Are you fully out, partially out, only in dating or sex, not out at all, or you're here as an ally and you are not on your coming out journey? So since it is Pride Month, I wanted to give a little bit of LGBTQ plus history and kind of talk about the origins of Pride Month and also, the roots of where we are today, where we came from as queer people. Just to disclose, I identify as a cisgender gay male. So that's me. And yeah, so Pride Month started really with riots, with protesting. So for those that don't know, the Stonewall riots that began in 1969 was when in queer bars in New York City, the Stonewall Inn in the West Village, they were being raided by police. So these queer spaces were places where queer people could go to connect with one another, meet people, explore their identity, and police were encroaching on that. So in response to that, the first Pride marches started in 1970, and these were started in cities that were known as queer havens. So New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and Los Angeles were the first Pride marches. And of course, now they're all over the country, all over the world. And they're a moment for queer people to advocate for LGBTQ plus rights. And just to point out, a lot of these marches were led by brown and Black women and trans women. So I want to recognize, our ancestors and the people that got us our rights and that continue to fight for our rights for all LGBTQ plus people. And then also in the 80s, the HIV/AIDS epidemic, where the US government overlooked how HIV was affecting the gay community, resulting in the loss of an entire generation and collective trauma of the LGBTQ plus community. And again, I say all of this because coming out is a journey, right? It's your own process. I believe it is a unique experience that all of our circumstances in our lives add up to how we come out, why we come out, who we come out to. And I think it's important to honor the people that have fought for our rights and fought for our ability to safely come out and safely live in any society. Okay, and so that's kind of where we started, right? Of course, LGBTQ plus people have existed well before 1969, but those are kind of some moments in time to recognize with Pride Month and also talk about, coming out in a way publicly, right? If maybe marching in a Pride parade is a way of coming out for you. And here we are today, right? So current legislation that we are facing as the LGBTQ plus community is kind of under attack a little bit by our government in certain states and certain places. So these bills might make it less safe for LGBTQ plus people to come out, to live safely and freely, and participate in a society that sees them authentically. So as you'll see, and as some of you may know, there are bills out there limiting trans-affirming healthcare, for young people who may believe they're transgender, non-binary, whatever their identity is. they're limiting doctors from giving proper medications, surgeries that would help them to live a more authentic and true life for themselves. Banning trans athletes from sports. So recently believe it was the Worldwide Swimming Authority said that trans women were not allowed to compete in races, again, limiting us to live authentically, right? So you're a transgender woman who's also an athlete and a skilled swimmer or any sport. How are we limited now, even today, by what certain government or abiding bodies tell us what we can and cannot do? Certain bathroom laws based on your gender identity, where you can or cannot use a certain bathroom that aligns with your identity. Inability to discuss sexuality or gender with youth in schools. As you may know, it's kind of colloquially known as the Don't Say Gay law in Florida, where certain grades, I believe it's K through third, where they're not, teachers, schools, etc., are not allowed to talk about anything related to sexuality or gender. So for example, if a child has two fathers or two mothers, they're not allowed to proudly represent their family. And that can create shame, embarrassment, not only for the child, but also for the parents of how are we seen as equals as any other parent or person in this world. And then most recently, in Texas, banning youth from drag shows. Drag, a form of entertainment in the LGBTQ plus community, one that is typically filled with life and love and humor, one that shows a different form of expressing yourself. And they're saying that those are a bad influence for children. So all of these, we are fighting them. There are groups out there fighting them, but it also might impact someone's ability to feel safe, to come out and live proudly in this world. Okay. Another implication to coming out is the suicide risk. So suicide in the LGBTQ plus community is unfortunately higher than other communities. It is the second leading cause of death in youth ages 10 to 24, in 10 to 24 in general, but with significantly increased risk with the LGBTQ plus community. LGBTQ plus individuals are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than their straight peers. And 45% of LGBTQ plus youth seriously considered suicide in the last year. Now, I know these statistics are heavy and suicide can be a difficult topic to talk about, but the truth is this affects our community more than other communities, especially if someone doesn't see a path forward for themselves, whether they're guardians or the school district they live in or the town or city that they live in, they don't feel safe to be themselves. They might have suicidal ideation, they may have depression that could lead to suicidal ideation. It's really important for those supporting LGBTQ plus people coming out, after coming out, to really check in with each other and make sure that you're a safe space where people can explore suicidal thoughts, because it is normal to think about the end sometimes. And by normalizing it, we're talking about it and we're saying it's okay to have these thoughts. I am here, there are resources, and that you're not alone in what you're feeling. Another resource as well is the Trevor Project, which is a free crisis hotline for the LGBTQ plus community. You can reach out to a crisis counselor 24/7, no matter where you are in this country. Although it typically services youth 13 to 25 years old, anyone is allowed to speak with a crisis counselor. And if you are over 25, they have a lot of resources beyond the Trevor Project for people that might be going through crisis or just need someone to talk to if they feel like they don't have anyone else in their life. Especially if you're in the beginning of your coming out process, this might be a place to explore your identity with someone. And they have both a lifeline, which is a phone service, and also text and chat if you're more comfortable talking digitally with someone. So I wanted to go over different identities. So often we use words like gay or queer, or maybe lesbian is more mainstream, but I wanted to really go through all these identities because sometimes one label might not fit right for you. You might think you're one thing because of a limited knowledge of what's out there. And these are just kind of some of the main ones that I wanted to go over, but there are more identities beyond that. And I encourage anyone to explore for themselves what it means to be queer, what it means to be a part of the LGBTQ plus community. So, with more representation and education, there are more labels of identities that may feel like a good fit for you, even though these identities have existed long before these words were attached with them. And I want to remind everyone that labels can change at any time and only you can say what feels true to you. I'm going to repeat this point a lot because part of being in the LGBTQ plus community is maybe not fitting inside one box, or maybe fitting inside one box for a little while and realizing, no, I'm in a different box, or I'm in a different place, I'm on a different path. And that's kind of part of the beauty of being queer, is that freedom to create your own roadmap, create your own life, and not having to necessarily confine yourself to societal standards. Although, of course, that's fine too, if you see a certain, maybe more traditional path for yourself. So just to go over sexual orientation, which is related to physically or emotionally attracted to someone or both. So gay or lesbian, that is someone who is interested or attracted to the same sex. Now, while gay is usually attached to male identifying people, there are certain women identifying people that might use gay, although lesbian also is a word that could be used for that. Bisexual, someone who is attracted to the same gender or a different gender. Pansexual, someone who is attracted to all people, regardless of the other person's gender or sexuality. Demisexual, someone needs to be emotionally connected to someone in order to feel sexually attracted to them. So really that kind of intellectual, deep, maybe even spiritual or just emotional connection that allows that person to feel safe and then physically or sexually attracted to that person. And then there are people who identify as asexual, who have little to no sexual attraction to any person. And then aromantic, that is someone who has little to no romantic attraction to any person. And then we have gender identity. So this is someone's individual's personal sense of their gender, not to be confused with sex or what people are assigned at birth based on their body parts. So someone who identifies as cisgender, like myself, is someone whose gender aligns with the sex that they were assigned at birth. Then we have transgender. Now, this is an umbrella term used to describe anyone whose gender identity or gender expression differs from what sex they were assigned at birth. Then we have non-binary or genderqueer. You're not solely male or female. This is going beyond the gender binary. So really, if we look at gender as a spectrum, this is maybe someone who some days expresses themselves more masculine or more feminine, or doesn't identify solely with male or female. And then also gender fluid, their gender can change, right? So there's no fixed identity. Their gender is able to go throughout the spectrum and really kind of gives them the ability to check in with themselves and not be limited by one or two identities. And then finally, gender expression. How do I present myself to the world? Now, gender expression is not dictated by your sexuality or your gender identity. You can express your gender any way you see fit. And again, that can change by the day, by the hour. And then also within gender expression, the phrase gender nonconforming might come up a bit. This is expressing one's gender outside the stereotypical masculine or feminine societal norm. So kind of a basic example, maybe we dress baby girls in pink and baby boys in blue. And this is really saying, I don't have to follow any rules. I am myself, I'm my own individual, and I get to choose how I want to present myself to people. I'd like to see where those of us that either came out or are coming out in this journey, where we all are. What is or was your biggest barrier to coming out? A, family. B, religious beliefs or faith. C, fear of negative reactions. or D, dating? And I will give you all just a few minutes to fill that out, and then we'll share the results. Okay, so let's see the results. So we have 43% for family, 43% for fear of negative reactions, and 14% for dating. So an even split between family and fear of negative reactions, and then a few people for dating. So, maybe we'll focus a little more on what is or what was it like to come out to family, and then also dating. And if anyone has a question about negative reactions after coming out, or if people have experiences they want to put in the chat, we all can have a shared experience here. So I'm going to go over some of the stressors or risks to coming out. So here I listed 6 general topics, and I'll kind of break down what some of these might mean in terms of you. And I just want to reiterate that coming out is an individual process. So even though I'm going to talk about certain general themes or problems that might come up for people based on maybe my own experience, people I know in my life, and also some of my clients, we can also talk about later if there's specific questions you'd like to ask. I'd love to hear them, and hopefully we have time to get through them all. So let's start with family or friends, one of the biggest answers on the poll we just did. So in regards to family, depending on how old you are or what your relationship is like to your family, there might be financial implications to coming out. So if your parents or guardians support you at all and you come out to them, is there a fear of, okay, well, how do I pay my bills? What if I'm kicked out? So housing is another thing. Am I going to have to look for housing? Maybe I'm on my parents' health insurance if I'm under 26. So those are all things we need to think about. And then also with family and friends, their religious beliefs or their political beliefs could influence how safe you feel to come out to them. Because, certain religious beliefs might conflict with your queer identity, both family or friends. But on top of that, you might have your own religious beliefs that might conflict with your queer identity. And I'll talk a little bit later about what that means when we have these different parts of ourselves, this intersectional self, and how that might influence your ability to safely come out. So another thing is microaggressions, right? So just to give a definition so we're all on the same page, microaggressions are indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against marginalized groups. So this could be like slurs on the street, or maybe comments of the way you present yourself. If someone makes a comment on, maybe you have your fingernails painted, maybe you cross your legs a certain way, maybe you dress in a certain way, and people make comments that are not directly cruel or directly offensive, but there's those questions and anxieties over, well, what does that mean? What was their intention in saying that? And do they know I'm queer? Do they think I'm queer? This could be something to consider. And unfortunately, part of being in a marginalized group is many of us have to cope with microaggressions before coming out and even after coming out. So the coming out process is an ongoing process. You start a new job, you meet new people, you have to decide for yourself, what do I disclose about myself? How much do I want this person or persons to know? And also be aware of potential microaggressions that can happen in many different places. We also have a blog that I'll share later about what is a microaggression and some kind of more examples of how to deal with them and ways to cope. So another stressor or risk to coming out might be uncertainty about the future. So as I was saying earlier, the lack of a traditional roadmap could bring about stress, fear, anxiety, but also there is the freedom that you get to go down this path, and at any point you can take a turn, you can turn around, you can decide you want to speed ahead. There's really this freedom to create your own journey. And it can be scary at times, but there's this double-edged sword of, it can also be fun and exciting. And there might be a lot of questions and implications about coming out that you might not have the answers to, like, okay, well, what is life going to be like after I come out to X person? Or if I'm living fully out, what does that mean when I meet new people? What does that mean in the workplace? What does that mean for dating and sex if I previously was engaging in sex or dating with a different gender identity or someone with a different sexual orientation? I really want to validate that all of these questions may not be figured out right away after coming out, and that we're all on in the queer community wondering, like, what does life look like? Who am I in relationship to not only my queer self, but also the other parts of myself? So goals, right? What do goals look like before coming out, while you're coming out, after coming out? Some places where goals are common that you might be confused as to, will this impact my goals, might be career-wise. So will I be limited, or will I be impacted if I'm living a fully out life, or if I'm not ready to come out yet, but I come out while I'm at work? Will people look at me differently, treat me differently? These fears are valid, but I also believe that living authentically, living truer to you, overall will reduce stress and bring you more happiness. Family-wise, so if you are in a same-sex partnership, you may not be able to have children naturally or in the traditional sense. So this might be thinking about adoption, thinking about surrogacy, thinking about IVF or insemination, or other ways to plan for a family rather than just having a child through traditional male-female intercourse. And then also goals geographically. So where do you want to live? Where do you want to settle down? Where do you want to explore yourself? Maybe you grew up in a small town somewhere. Maybe you grew up somewhere that is less LGBTQ plus friendly. Do you want to move? How do you move? Do you have to find a job in that place? So there's a lot of questions that I can imagine come up for someone that's somewhere in the coming out process. And I just want to say that coming out does not limit you from any of these goals, whether you are not out yet, partially out, or fully out. I believe that you can achieve all your goals, and that the coming out process will happen when you're ready, and that you should continue to live your life authentically with your queer self or wherever you are at, related to all the circumstances that make you who you are. Okay, dating. I know a few of you talked about dating. So one stressor could be introducing different identifying partners to family or friends. That may seem scary. So if you never introduced a partner to family or friends before, or you introduced a partner of a different identity, you might worry about, how will this partner be received? What questions will I be asked? What questions will they be asked? So I definitely can understand some stress coming from that. However, on the opposite side, living in this digital age, the plethora of apps allow for you to explore any and all interests when it comes to dating before coming out. So if you're not ready to put your face out there, or want to, explore, you're at the very beginning of your journey and want to explore dating apps anonymously, there are tons of different apps out there. And actually, a recent blog by one of my colleagues, Andrew, talks about dating apps with the LGBTQ plus community. And again, we'll be sending those resources in an email follow-up. And I just want to say that you do not need to be fully out in all areas of your life to explore dating a different gender or a different sexual orientation, and nor do you owe anyone an explanation of where you are in your journey. So let's say you are not out yet or partially out, and you're talking with someone on an app that is fully out. You do not owe them an explanation of why you're not out yet if you do not feel comfortable to. I believe that everyone in the LGBTQ plus community should respect you for your journey and see you for who you are, where you are, and meet you where you're at. And that comes from mutual respect and kindness for one another. And then finally, the workplace. So depending on the field that you work in, there's unfortunately still a heteronormative culture that exists in many kind of career paths. And you might have to face listening to maybe certain men talking about women in a certain way, or talking about sex that might make you uncomfortable, or might make you wonder, okay, let's take me, for example, as a gay male, would I feel comfortable talking about certain dates that I went on, or certain sexual experience with friends at work or in the workplace? Would I feel comfortable talking about my family structure, my chosen family? in ways that it might not even be a second thought for certain people that identify as heterosexual or cisgender. What I say to that is find allies to share your life outside of work if you're comfortable doing so. So your life outside of work, if you want to bring it into the workplace because it feels maybe like there's this disconnect between your work self and then yourself in your private life, find the people that you feel safe with. Maybe dip your toes in the water to figure out, oh, is this person someone I can confide in? And I want to validate any fears that anyone has that superiors or other colleagues might have about you if you start living authentically in the workplace, whether that's playing with your sense of fashion that speaks true to you, while also, abiding to certain professional policies in the workplace. Maybe that's certain makeup, certain accessories, bold fashion that you want to be heard and seen. I really encourage you, if you feel comfortable, to do that. But I also want to validate that I know it can be scary sometimes to take that risk, right? Coming out is a risk. And what we're all talking about here is what risks feel safe, what risks feel really large. Maybe we want to make them smaller. So in my next slide, I'm going to cover the rewards to coming out. So here are some of the rewards I see to coming out. And when I say coming out, that can be to one person, that can be to someone online, that could be to a therapist, someone that you trust, a confidant. It doesn't have to be just fully out to everyone. So one thing is the potential to decrease anxiety and or depression. Often those of us who are not out, but exploring other parts of our identity may have to code switch, right? So sort of what I was talking about in the workplace. You might have to keep secrets or constantly question how to act or dress, depending on the environment or circumstances. So coming out might give you the freedom to quiet some of those voices in your heads. I have a client who is in the coming out process, and they were talking about how they're very aware of their body language in front of certain people. So maybe a cisgender male, the way you cross your legs, maybe the way you talk with your hands, the way you hold yourself and walk down the street. These are things that you might think about that maybe after coming out, again, to whoever you feel comfortable doing so, they might start getting softer, getting quieter. Those things that feel comfortable to you, you might not care as much about what other people think or these perceived anxieties that we might think. Another thing about this is focusing on what you can control versus what you cannot control. So I can control what I say, who I say it to, the way I dress. I cannot control other people's opinions or their behaviors towards me, but I can control my reaction and your emotions, whatever comes up when someone has maybe a negative reaction or, says a slur to you. That's valid. Maybe there's anger, maybe there's sadness, maybe there's frustration, maybe there's disgust. That's the time that you can find people that you are comfortable sharing your feelings with. Again, it can be therapy, it can be a friend, it can be a family member, it can be a partner. Make sure your feelings are heard, because the journey, we're not sure how it's going to go, right? And there's a lot of questions, as I mentioned earlier. So really make sure you honor those feelings, because they're your truth. And there might also be a greater awareness of what is potentially triggering you. So while coming out, you might wonder, okay, is this a fear of judgment or a fear of rejection? Is this a legitimate fear of safety, maybe physical safety, maybe verbal safety? But after coming out, you might find a newfound sense of calm and peace. And for everyone here that's on the journey, both before, during, after, I hope that you find some calm and peace after this webinar. And with that in line, living closer to your authentic self. So unlike the fairy godmother in Cinderella, waving a magic wand and coming out will not eliminate any and all issues. However, it is one step closer to your authentic self. By recognizing shame and diminishing its power, this is an act of bravery and resilience, because shame thrives on secrecy. And the minute you tell one person, it's really no longer a secret because that one person knows. And therefore, it's the beginning of diminishing that shame and really living truly. Again, you have the freedom to create your own story and change it at any time that it does not suit you. So let's say you're a person, a female client who identifies as a lesbian, and they come out as a lesbian, but as they're exploring their sexuality more and their gender identity more, they realize, oh, maybe I'm non-binary and also potentially a lesbian too. There's no right or wrong answer to when you come out, how you come out, and you can change at any point because ultimately you are the only person who knows your truth. And so you get to decide what you do with that, and don't let anyone limit you from feeling like, oh, I came out as this and I need to stay in that lane. No, you can switch, you change, you have the permission to be whoever you want to be. And then exploration of different parts of yourself. Maybe not only by not being out, there's been limitations of other parts of yourself. So that could be, again, gender expression, that could be certain hobbies, that could be even maybe certain career choices. Maybe you didn't feel safe to be out and do a certain job, or vice versa, not be out and do a certain job. So this could be the first step to like unlocking this chest of who are you? Who do you want to be? And give you again that freedom to pivot your life or keep everything the same and just share your sexuality or gender identity. And then finally, another plus to coming out is you're accepted into the LGBTQ plus community. Now, let me be clear. If you're not out, you're still welcome in the LGBTQ plus community, but maybe you might not do certain activities or do certain things in public. This is an opportunity to really break those barriers and welcomed into a place of love and joy and celebration for who you are. This could include a chosen family. So no matter how your birth family reacts to your queer identity, you will never be alone with the LGBTQ plus community. You can find a chosen family, whether it be friends, whether it be certain family members that are maybe not immediately related to you, maybe it be other queer people, potentially other straight allies. And there's a lot of support and resources out there for the LGBTQ plus community. So depending on your interest, there may already be an existing group that aligns with certain hobbies or passions. For example, here in New York City, there are queer running clubs, queer sports clubs, queer book clubs, and this could be a way to branch into your queer identity while also combining it with something that's already pre-existing. On top of that, there's a ton of online communities, and these are a resource to you. So if you're questioning your identity and not ready to explore it in person, that's okay. Maybe the internet is a place for you. There are plenty of places where you can keep your identity hidden until you're ready to come out. So I've talked about coming out, I've talked about the stressors and the risks, and I've talked about the rewards, but what does coming out even mean? As I mentioned, it is a personal decision. So I want to go over words that we kind of throw around in society and kind of break it down, bring some clarity, and give you the permission to explore further. So as I mentioned, I work with individuals, couples, and I run the gay men's group here on Thursday nights at My Therapy NYC. And I also work with a handful of LGBTQ plus individuals who are in various stages on the coming out process. So let's talk about fully out. What does it mean to be fully out? It could look different based on your individual circumstances, maybe based on your work environment or your relationships to certain family members. So for example, I have a client who lives a fully out life here in New York City. They're out in the workplace, they have a partner, they're out to their friends, they march in the Pride Parade, but they're not out to anyone back home. They may see themselves as fully out, or they may see themselves as partially out. You get to decide what your level of outness is. You really can't and don't have to subscribe to anyone else's definition of what a proud and out life looks like. So partially out, this is really kind of giving you autonomy over your identity. So maybe you're out only to your friends. Maybe you're out only to a partner. Maybe you're out only in applications. Maybe you're out to friends and families, but not the workplace. There's any combination of places where you might be safe and feel comfortable to be out with certain people and places, but not others. And you might say to yourself, I'm out, I'm living authentically, and this feels good to me. And I want to validate that this may be enough for you, that you don't need to tell certain family members if you don't want to, especially if you're questioning safety and questioning that those negative reactions that I know some of you said there was a fear of negative reactions. And then not out at all to anyone. What would it like to be seen? I want you to ask yourself that. So I'm going to say it again. And for those of us who are not out, again, what would it like to be seen by somebody? Maybe just one person, maybe a stranger online, maybe a stranger in an application. Just owning that identity, whatever it is, and putting it out there can be really powerful. Even just saying the words, I am gay. And as I mentioned, I run one of our gay men's groups here. So I just want to give a little examples further of like different possibilities for coming out. That gives you the permission that, oh, my story is actually not that different, or I'm not alone in where I am in the process. So there is a potential to hold back from coming out if you're living away, as I mentioned earlier, where you grew up, and you still might feel like you're able to live authentically. I have a client who is not out in the workplace because they don't feel like there's space to be seen and discuss their queer identity, and yet they're out in every other area of their life. They might feel comfortable with that now, but I explore with them, well, what would it be like to share with certain colleagues at work about your queer, even if it's just one person to talk about, so it doesn't feel so separate and you don't have to code switch where you're this assumed perceived in this case straight person, even though you identify as gay. You might have an unwelcoming family or a welcoming family with strong religious beliefs. So that might limit you from coming out to them, but again, you might feel emboldened to come out in other places. And another situation that some of my clients have faced is if someone has another queer sibling, gay, transgender, bisexual, whatever it may be, who comes out first, that might limit you or make you question, okay, do I want to come out to my family or friends? When do I come out? Do I wait? Do I do it now? There's a lot of possibilities that can be influenced by, again, the workplace, your geographic location, your family's religious beliefs, or your own religious beliefs, and also just your family structure and dynamic and their identities. So I'm gonna share with you all the poll results from earlier, just so we see who's in the room. So it looks like we have 47% who are fully out, 35% who are partially out, and 18% who are an ally. Thank you all for being here. I see all of you, and I appreciate you all being here again. So now we're going to talk about supporting yourself and others when coming out. I'll stop sharing this. So as I mentioned, coming out is a personal choice. Only you can know when and how you want to come out. I really value my work with my clients that are in the process of coming out. I had one client say that I was gentle with them. And that's how I want you to treat yourself and anyone that's supporting someone that just recently came out or is on the coming out process and you're one of the people they're out to. Be gentle, be patient, be kind. You may not know all the thoughts and feelings that are going on in that person's body and mind. And being there for them, being there for yourself is a reminder that it's unique to you. One of the ways, if you are thinking about coming out either for the first time or if you are partially out and want to come out to someone new, a really great idea is to come up with a disclosure plan when you're ready and to ask yourself these questions. So 1, do I know what I want to say? Do I want to blurt out, I'm gay? Do I want to blurt out, do I want to be like maybe a little softer with it and like, hey, I want to talk to you about something. When would you be available? I want to share something with you about myself, whatever seems right to you. And then the next question would be, who do I tell first? Some things to consider when you're thinking about coming out to someone. First, safety, security. Those things matter most in terms of physical safety, emotional safety, how will that person respond? Maybe you want to consider a chosen family member to come out to you first, whether it's a best friend, a mentor, again, a therapist could be someone that might be in your chosen family, depending on how long you've been working with them. They might feel like the safest figure in your life. Queer spaces, that could be a way of coming out, right? Going to a gay bar, going to a queer party or a queer running club, book club, etc., might be a step into coming out. And the internet or apps, so those are places you might want to come out first as well. Once you decide on that person or persons you want to come out to, maybe look for some signals that you should pay attention to. Think about previous conversations you've had with this person, nonverbal reactions when queer things have come up. See if you can just kind of do a check-in to be like, oh, has that person ever said something potentially offensive, potentially controversial? Maybe I'm not ready to come out to that person just yet. And then again, checking in with yourself. Am I prepared to answer questions? Is it a good time for you? So that's like number 1, make sure that you're in the right emotional space where it feels good for you. Can you be patient? And think about, what do I do if someone reacts badly? Another way to support yourself and to support others is how to make coming out smaller. So are there ways to dip your toes in the water? Gender expression is a really great way to play with that if that feels true to you. So maybe for a cisgender man, painting your nails, maybe for someone wearing certain accessories or different articles of clothing that identify, I'm different, I'm unique, I'm special. There's something amazing and wonderful about me that I may not have the power to say the words yet, but this is a way of kind of giving a nod to it that maybe I'm on my way, I'm on my journey. And are there certain people you can share your identity with where the stakes are lower no matter how they respond? So sometimes the scariest thing about coming out is just saying the words out loud. So maybe saying it to someone where if they react badly, if they react well, it doesn't really matter that much to you. And then it's like, whoa, I just said that out loud. Maybe I can do this with other people where the stakes are higher in my life at some point soon. And then the intersectionality, right? So this is both for allies and for yourself. Recognize that your queer identity or someone's queer identity is only a part of you, and you get to decide how big or small it is. You might see your sexuality or gender identity as just a small part, and maybe your race or your class or your geographical location, your education level, these things might be more important to you than your queer identity. And it's all valid because it's your queer identity, and no one can tell you how important it is or isn't to you. And also, speaking of intersectionality, all these other factors might affect your coming out or your queerness. So your class, your race, your gender, your sexuality, your physical abilities, your education, your geographical location, all of these things may be things to consider when coming out. And also as an ally, think of this person as not just queer, right? They're also a son, a daughter, a lawyer, a person of color. There's all these different parts of ourselves that make us all individual and unique. And lastly, as I said, focusing on what you can control versus what you cannot. That really will bring you a sense of groundedness, knowing that I can control me. I may not be able to control other people, and that's okay. So I wanted to share just a short little clip about someone talking about their coming out journey. This is Jerome. Jerome is a gay male, And in the beginning of this clip, he talks about his coming out story with his parents and how queer people are often asked, how do you know you're gay? Like, how do you know? He talks about the limitations of the term closet, so coming out of the closet, and how there are potential stigmas and negative connotations, both before coming out and during and after coming out. So this is him talking a little bit more about his journey.
As the literature started talking about something called the closet, whatever that is, I found it hard to relate to the article. And that's my main point of tonight. Because when we, and the literature as well, use the metaphor of a closet and the term coming out of the closet, we reinforce the idea that coming out or disclosing your sexual identity is a single-step action. And through the years, this term, coming out, has gained such a negative connotation, as if disclosing your sexual identity is like breaking through a reinforced concrete wall or something. And this is not how I experienced it. It's just plainly misleading. Now, instead, disclosing is a journey, an expedition. One where you will encounter not one single major barrier, but instead a variety of smaller ones along the way. And every time you tell a friend or a colleague of yours that you're gay, you've broken through one of those smaller barriers. And frankly, your journey may never end, because you will probably have to tell new friends or new colleagues about your sexual orientation your whole life. I mean, I feel like me standing here giving this TED Talk is still part of my journey, one that I started almost 3 years ago. But the main reason why I regarded my disclosure not as a closet but as a journey is because, looking back, it was so inspirational and insightful for me. Whenever I encountered a barrier that I found tough to break, I simply stepped to the side of the road, sat on a bench in the sun, and calmly analyzed the situation. What is it that makes this barrier so tough? Is it me? Is it the other? Or is it the barrier, and what should I do to be able to make it through? And in this way, I learned so much about myself, about my strengths and weaknesses, but also about those of the other, or society, or a culture. And here's another thing. You don't have to make this journey alone. Why not take some friends with you, like I'm doing now? Or make some new friends along the way. Laugh about it with them, cry, not too much, experiment, and try to have some fun. There were so many times when I sat in a pub laughing hysterically about jokes that my friends, some of whom who aren't here now, made about my homosexuality and homosexuality in general. And I felt like when I told my parents that I was gay, they joined me on my journey as well. Because in turn, they also told some of their friends about my homosexuality. They also broke through some of their barriers and some of mine. And this process was also very insightful and inspiring for them. I think everyone deserves a journey like this. And looking back, even though some of these barriers were nerve-wracking to break, I would do it again. Everyone deserves a journey like this one. So, I encourage all of you, even if you're not gay, to join the journey of your friends and colleagues who are gay, and awe yourself at what you will experience and encounter on this identity-forming journey. And even if you don't know anyone who is gay, or a colleague of yours who is gay, I'm certain that everyone has a secret right now that they keep to themselves, but that they would much rather discuss with someone else. Now, I know that some of you may think, well, that's easy for me to say, because I live here at this university, in an accepting environment, here in the Netherlands. And I do realize damn well that opening up in Indonesia at the moment, or in certain African countries, or in North Carolina, in the States at this moment, is so much harder. But I'm not trying to convince you that this journey is just plain fun and easy. No, I'm trying to show you that the way you see a journey up front, so either as a closet or as an expedition, will have a tremendous impact on how you will perceive the process of disclosing itself. So what I've done during the past 8 minutes is I've divided this traditionally high barrier of a closet and divided it into smaller ones. A journey that is fruitful, that's inspiring, that is fun to do. And I wish for you that after this TED Talk, you will realize that disclosing your sexual orientation is not a barrier to look up to, but a journey to look forward to.
Okay, so as you see, Jerome sees it as a journey as well. This video is from 2016, so I encourage everyone, if you want to watch the whole thing, it's on YouTube. Some resources. So these are some resources. There are many out there. These are just some of the ones that I thought would be relevant to this talk. But feel free, if anyone knows of any other ones that I didn't include, to put them in the chat for everyone else. So there's this podcast called Coming Out Pod with Lauren and Nicole. These are interviews sharing firsthand coming out stories when they came out to their friends, families, and beyond. And they do that weekly. When I Came Out is a blog of people's coming out stories. So again, short little snippets of what their coming out was like. PFLAG, which stands for Parents, Family, and Friends of Lesbian and Gays, is the first and largest uniting allies in the US. And what I see it as an organization, even though they do many things, is if you do come out and your family is not welcoming, there are allies out there, specifically parents, who want to be there for you. The Human Rights Campaign is the largest LGBTQ+ advocacy group in the US, focusing on protecting and expanding rights for the LGBTQ+ community, most notably same-sex marriage, hate crimes, and HIV/AIDS advocacy. They have coming out guides for both sexual orientation and gender identity. So if you want more information, like a coming out handbook, the Human Rights Campaign has that. And the Trevor Project as well has a coming out handbook. It's more geared towards youth and young adults, but there's some really great tips and helpful coping skills with coming out in those handbooks. And then here are some resources locally in New York City. The center is a health and wellness center for LGBTQ+ community, including career services, family services, substance use treatment, and more. The Ali Forney Center provides housing support and other services for the LGBTQ+ community, especially focused on young people. Named after Ali Forney, a Black, gay, and gender non-conforming youth who was a peer counselor for homeless LGBTQ+ youth and was unfortunately killed at the young age of 22. So again, this history that we have as a queer community, I believe coming out is honoring that. And again, there's no pressure, there's no timeline. You get to do this on your own, but I wanted to make sure I highlight the people that came before us that give us the safety to come out today. Callan Lord is an affirming healthcare center in Chelsea for the LGBTQ+ community. The Gay Male Health Clinic, intending to end the AIDS epidemic and supporting those living with HIV and AIDS. The Audra Lorde Project is a community wellness, progressive social and economic justice for the people of color in the LGBTQ+ community. Audra Lorde was an American writer, feminist, and civil rights activist who identified as a lesbian. And the Trans Legal Defense Fund. This is a defense fund focusing on transgender equality through litigation and public policy work. And as I mentioned, here's some more resources from us here at My Therapy NYC, a few blogs, When Someone Comes Out to You, which is a video blog, Undoing Shame, which is a video blog also by me, and What Are Microaggressions? And I just wanted to highlight our current gay men's groups, which we have on Mondays and Tuesdays, 7:30 to 9, Wednesdays and Thursdays, 8 to 9:30 p.m., and then a Thursday virtual group that is 8 to 9:30 p.m. As you see, right now, we only have groups for people that identify as gay men. However, we're discussing actively here at the practice of expanding beyond gay men's groups to include other gender identities, other sexualities, to really have resources for all of you out there that are looking for a place to connect, process emotions, reflect on your queer identity in a group setting that is safe and inviting. So that is the presentation. And now we can open up for questions. The one thing I want to say that I want to lead this or end this with before we do questions is I had a client, two clients actually, that for those of us out there that identify as anything under the LGBTQ+ umbrella, that have said things to me in our sessions that have really stuck with me about their queer identity. One is being queer is a superpower. it unlocks so many things that can be freeing. And I really kind of take that now with the work that I do with my clients, and also for myself, to not see it as this burden or, eliminating shame through seeing it as a superpower, that we have something that other people do not have, and it makes us really special and really unique. And then another client of mine, very early on into our work, talking about, the bills and laws that are going on in this country against LGBTQ plus people, is being queer is being political. Our identity is constantly politicized. And in my work, I like to look through a social justice and equality lens. And I believe as queer people, it's really difficult to separate our queer identity from the world around us and our civil rights. We fought hard for them. We continue to fight for them. And I just want to validate that your identity is yours. And I know that's simple, but I hope through this webinar, you're learning that there is no one way to come out. There is no right way. There is no wrong way, that this journey is yours and yours alone. And as Jerome said in the TED Talk, if you feel comfortable, when you feel safe, you can bring people along with that journey to further explore your queer identity. So just to start off, please, again, any questions, put them in the chat. One of the ones I received, so I'll say one for, for our allies out there, people that are supporting LGBTQ plus people. One question I received is, how do I respond when someone comes out to me? So first, I would say express gratitude that they shared this with you, and make sure that it's clear that you will be there for them throughout this journey. One thing I would stay away from is saying, I always knew. That kind of invalidates the person's act of coming out. They probably thought a lot about this. And if they're coming out to you, they probably have a lot of intention and feelings around why they chose you. And when you say, I always knew, as a supporter or an ally, you're basically making it about yourself rather than the queer person that is coming out to you. So that takes away their power a little bit. So I would avoid saying that. If they come out to you and just say, I'm gay, I'm transgender, whatever it is, ask if they want to talk more about it right now. They may or may not, depending on what it's like for them to come out to you, and don't take it personally. They may want to follow up at a later date to talk more. A really validating thing could be asking if they've told other people and how it went. That's information for you to know where they are in their journey and what kind of support they might need. But also it gives them a chance to share again that part of their coming out journey. Ask if they need somewhere to stay. So safety, again, and security can be an issue. So really think about that. And it's okay if you, as a supporter and an ally, need more time to process their coming out. Coming out is a two-way process. They're coming out to you, and maybe you had no idea, maybe you weren't ready for it, and that's okay. Just let them know that, you appreciate them, you see them, you hear them, that maybe you want some more time to think about discussing this further. Let's see, one more question. Okay, so what should I do if someone reacts negatively to my coming out? That's a really great question. And I know that was a fear of some of the people that have either come out or in the process of coming out. So going back to the disclosure plan earlier that I mentioned, remember to share with someone at a time that's good for you, and one where you're willing to answer more questions. You may not know what's coming at you, and that's okay. But if you're grounded and come in with a way that is a clear-headed and openness, I think that'll be better to receive a negative reaction. Also, if you receive a negative reaction after coming out, you are fully allowed to set any boundary that you need. If that's ending a conversation, if that's walking away, if that's saying, hey, I'm not responding well to your reaction. I see it, I hear it, but right now I can't be a part of this conversation. That's okay. This, again, your coming out story is your journey, and you get to decide how and what it looks like. And in doing so, you can remind the person that the coming out is about you, not them. Their reaction is their reaction, but this is you taking this brave step. Afterwards, if someone does respond to you negatively, make sure you talk about your feelings with someone you trust, whether it's sadness, anger, confusion, or disgust. All of these are valid. All of these deserve to be heard. And I would hope that you have someone in your life. Again, it could be a friend, a partner, maybe someone online, or even a therapist to present those emotions and really validate them. And last, keep in mind that their reaction may be based on something that has nothing to do with you. Again, religious or political beliefs, traditional values, whatever that means to someone. These are moments that you can turn to your self-care plan, whether it's certain hobbies, things that bring you peace, meditation, calm, happiness, things that are distracting, whatever you need when someone reacts to you negatively, you can flip the narrative, you can walk away and do whatever you need to do to ground yourself. Okay, let's see some more questions here. Is there a way to build confidence if family members ignore or deny your coming out? That is a really wonderful question. And I think it's something that many people face. I know some of my clients have faced that, where you come out, you make this bold step to coming out, and then it's not talked about. It's almost as if you never came out. I think one way to do that, to build that confidence, is to find the strength within you and the confidence within yourself to bring it up. And it can be challenging. It can be hard if you're still figuring out your own identity or navigating on this journey. Maybe it's bringing a friend with you to discuss it with your family. Maybe it's talking about lower stakes things like, oh, I went to this queer party, or I joined this queer thing. And your family might be uncomfortable at first, and you might be uncomfortable facing their discomfort. But with repeated conversations, it's possible those walls, these small steps towards breaking down these walls, could happen for you. If they're full out denying your identity, I hear you and I see you, and that I feel sadness for you if that's your experience. Maybe it's time to decide, what kind of relationship do I want with my family? What does family mean to me? If I have a chosen family, do I put more energy and emotion into them? Maybe you need to pull away to protect yourself a little bit. And again, this can all be temporary. Maybe it's also, one way I was thinking about too, again, with these resources, sending your family educational articles or handbooks or things for them that they can read. They might not read it, but you're honoring yourself by sending it, and you are doing what you can to feel safe and secure, and letting them know that this is important to you. This is not a phase. This is not going away. You know yourself better than anyone else. And yeah, but I know it can be challenging with family. So I'm going to give you also, all of you, contact info after. I'm happy to answer more questions, and you can always reach out to me after. Let's see here. Oh, Nicole, that's what, yes, I didn't even see that. Yeah, so I'm gonna share my contact information. You can email me. I'm happy to have a quick phone chat, email back and forth, also connect you with myself or any of the wonderful therapists at My Therapy NYC if you're thinking about starting therapy, if you're thinking about group therapy, couples therapy. All of us here at the practice, regardless of our identity, are LGBTQ plus competent. We work with a majority of LGBTQ plus people at the practice. So I would love to stay connected with you and continue this conversation. This is just an overview about coming out. And again, it's just, it's an individual journey. So I would love to connect with people individually to talk about this more. Let's see here. And then one more question we have. Based on identities, like, what if I want to come out, but I'm unsure how I identify? So one course of action is if the label queer feels right to you, you can always share that label with people and come out as queer. That can mean literally anything to anyone. And maybe it's a little bit of a safer way to say, okay, I know I'm different, but I'm not sure of my sexuality or my gender identity. And I maybe want some more time, or also maybe none of those other labels feel true to you. So maybe queer is just enough and that's all you need to say. Coming back to what I said earlier, you can change your label at any time. Nothing's written in stone, nothing is permanent unless you want it to be. But really being queer is an opportunity to create your own story. And also it's okay to, when you're coming out, to say like, I think I might be X. You know, you don't have to be 100% sure of yourself to come out to someone if you're looking for an ally or a community or a chosen family. Also in therapy, that could be a place to explore like different parts of your identity, whether it be gender expression, whether it be your gender identity, if you identify as a different sexuality that isn't heterosexual. And maybe also, as I mentioned earlier, with like lower stakes people in your life, maybe you choose coming out to them about different identities, even if that's just practice of saying it out loud and feeling comfortable to come out to the people that are most important in your life. So My Therapy NYC, again, I'm Jonathan Basla. If you want to email me directly, my email is jonathan@mytherapynyc.com. If you want to just email the practice overall, the email for that is info@mytherapynyc.com. You can go to our website. We have tons of blogs. We have past webinars on there. We have all of our services on there and other resources. So I hope you stay engaged with us. I thank you again for being here with me and including me with your coming out journey. And as you saw in the beginning, I shared with you all, I identify as a cisgender gay male. I'm disclosing to you, and now you all are a part of my coming out journey. The journey never ends. We're constantly coming out, and that can be both scary, but also really beautiful and empowering. So I hope you walk away with today with some tips, some tools, some validation that, yeah, there are people out there that are in your corner, and it's just a matter of finding them.